5 diabetes experts were escorted out of the American Diabetes Association meeting in New Orleans earlier this week.
So here we are at the American Diabetes Association Scientific Sessions. I'm with Dr. Stephen Kahn, Dr. Justin Ryder, and Dr. Aaron Kelly. And we're being threatened to be arrested.
The brass band soundtrack on that kills me. Anyway, all of that was for the mortal sin of handing out paper copies of an editorial. So what was this editorial about? What was the reaction of the diabetes research community? And how did the ADA handle the fallout? All of that and more on this week's status report. You may have heard of the Streisand effect. If not, real quick, in 2003, singer Barbra Streisand sued a photographer for $50 million for posting this aerial picture of her Malibu mansion on the internet. The photo had only been downloaded 6 times, but the publicity from the lawsuit led to the photo being downloaded nearly 500,000 times. I bring this up because what happened at the ADA meeting is a textbook example of the Streisand effect. Former ADA president and co-author of the editorial, John Buse, said, if they hadn't done anything, no one would have seen the article. I think there had been something like 300 page views before this happened. It's gone from being completely unknown to, as of last night, the 50th most cited, most viewed paper in the entire world among 300,000 papers published in the last month. My stat colleague Elizabeth Cooney was in New Orleans for the ADA meeting and has been covering the incident and its fallout for Stat. Liz, thanks so much for joining me.
Happy to be here.
So what was the offending editorial about?
The offending editorial took aim at changes that have happened in biomedical research under the Trump administration, and particularly what's happening with grants from the National Institutes of Health, how many have been cut, and now there are even new proposed rules about political appointees reviewing these scientific submissions.
And who authored the editorial?
The editorial was authored by members of the American Diabetes Association, including a former president, people who were considered experts in the field.
Did the ADA offer any explanation for why they would kick these folks out?
They did. It took a while, but after this happened on late Friday morning, they talked about a code of conduct being violated, which was distributing printed materials, which made a lot of us wonder, what box did we check that said we wouldn't distribute printed materials? That's what they said the first day. And then the next statement came saying that it was about nonpartisanship and their nonprofit designation as a 501c3. That's an Internal Revenue Service code that clearly says these organizations shouldn't be taking political stances, but individuals are allowed to do that. And if you read the editorial, there's a big italic paragraph ahead of it that says, these are the opinions of the individuals, not of the ADA. And by the way, it's published in one of the ADA journals.
Okay. So you were at the meeting. How did you find out the incident happened? How were people reacting?
Well, what happened was I was inside the main hall where the keynote speaker was scheduled to be Bhattacharya, director of the National Institutes of Health. He didn't come, but a substitute speaker did come. And all these things happened outside. The police and security people marching, the folks outside, the ones who were giving out printed copies of the editorial. And I found out about it later. Somebody just texted me a story from MedPage Today that included video of what was going on. And it was just so puzzling. Everyone I spoke to there and then later was shocked, didn't even believe it, that something like this would happen. And I tried to reach out to the people involved. And one of them said he'd be happy to talk to me, but it couldn't be at the conference center because he'd be arrested.
So there's been quite a bit of fallout. What's the fallout been like?
I've heard pretty universally from people, when I was there in New Orleans and then later contact, that they're just shocked and they just can't believe that this would happen. You may have heard there were 2 resignations. The president-elect stepped down. The chair of the scientific sessions committee stepped down, just saying this was not representative of their beliefs. And I had also learned that the people who did this, who wrote the editorial and distributed it, had let ADA, know what was going on. And I think there was some effort, if I have this right, to set up an opportunity for another point of view than the one espoused by NIH to cut grants. That didn't happen, and that was what was shocking to people, that there seemed to be no opportunity for members to voice another opinion.
And as you mentioned, the NIH director, Jay Bhattacharya, was supposed to speak at the meeting, but backed out kind of last minute. Some folks you spoke with kind of speculated that may have made it more likely something like this could happen. Why is that?
It was speculation, but what I've been hearing says that the NIH director has been under some, stress, I would guess. Let's say the NIH director has been getting, pushback on the cuts to biomedical research, whether it's in Congress or in the scientific community. And so there was a thought that perhaps there were assurances made that if he came to speak, the ADA would make sure to look out for any form of protest.
What do you think all of this says about the, biomedical research climate during this Trump administration?
It seems from what I saw and heard was that people who do the research, the people who are in this conference, are extremely concerned about the direction. I should say that after Rick Wojcik, who gave the senior advisor to Jay Bhattacharya, who spoke in his place, sat down for a fireside chat after, whenever the chief scientific officer of ADA, Rita Kalyani, asked a question about research cuts, people in the audience, the hundreds of people there, were like cheering and applauding her attempt to get a reason for why, in their view, their work was being sabotaged. So that seemed to be the mood, that people are very, very concerned about these cuts and about how you just can't turn them on and off and get back to science as we hope it's pursued.
And, yesterday there was a little bit more of a mea culpa from, is it mea culpa, is that how you say it?
I think it's mea culpa.
Mea culpa? Okay. I feel, as soon as I said it, I was like, that doesn't sound right. So there was, so yesterday there was a little bit more of a mea culpa from the ADA. What did they have to say in that statement?
The statement came from the organization's CEO, Charles Henderson, and he apologized to the people involved, the ones who were escorted out, apologized to the membership, and in a 3-minute video said that this did not represent who he was personally or the institution he is leading. There was no explanation of how this happened, but he did say that there was going to be a review of what led to this.
How much of a hit do you think ADA's reputation took here? Do you expect next year's meeting to be business as usual, or has it been long-lasting damage?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know that people are thinking that far ahead, but I have to say that I spoke to someone yesterday, and we were making the analogy that I think dates to Watergate. It isn't so much the crime, it's the cover-up. So it wasn't so much the marching the people out, it was the response for the weekend that made things worse.
Liz, that was great. Thanks so much.
It's great working with you. Take care now.
Thanks so much to Liz. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It's a little click, but it helps us out a lot. And we'll be back next week. Same stat time, same stat channel.